Hooray! It's 2019! The US government is shut down, fascism is on the rise, transphobia is getting all kinds of good press. Just 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global carbon emissions. But yeah, let's ban straws. I'm sure that's gonna make a big difference. New year, new us! Let's talk about video games. At the end of every year, we get a slew of lists telling us which games were the best games of that particular solar rotation. And they're fine, they're bubblegum, they're easy clicks for money. I've never particularly liked them, but I never really stopped to ask myself why. But this year, with a certain open-world cowboy-adjacent video game sequel topping so many lists, I couldn't help but feel my dislike turn into something a little more pointed. In October of 2018, Kotaku published a report summarizing interviews with 34 current and 43 former employees of various arms of Rockstar Games. This piece described a workplace that frequently demanded upwards of an 80-hour work week in the process of developing aforementioned open-world, Western-adjacent video game sequel. There are those in Rockstar who have contested these accounts, but of course they have a financial incentive to do so, don't they? Regardless, crunch is such a known entity in the games industry that it's probably safe to assume that most big-budget games involved it at some point, and it ruins lives. It breaks people. But okay, I worked as a grip and electrician on film sets for a few years. I get how these things go. Creative projects are not perfect mechanical instruments. They're complicated and messy things that are frequently unrecognizable from their finished state even days before they're released to the public. Sometimes crunch is necessary, which is why there are union regulations that incur hefty charges when productions do this, because it shouldn't be the plan. It should be a last resort. And if a production continues to overwork a department, they have the ability to walk off en masse in protest, and unionized productions can't hire non-union labor. And I'll be clear, this system isn't perfect and it still doesn't have near enough leverage, but it's something. Those protections exist and they are essential for maintaining the health and safety of workers. There are no unions for workers in the games industry. Large developers and publishers actively lobby against unionization efforts. Tech, in general, has an endemic lack of worker protection because the industry itself came to prominence in an era of ardent anti-unionism in the States. This is why they cultivate an image of cool workplaces with open bars and ball pits, why they peddle this libertarian fantasy of the self-made billionaire, because that glamour overwhelms criticism. Because even people who know about these exploitative labor practices can't imagine them occurring in such a chill place with such cool people. But it does happen. It is happening across the industry, and people take it because they've been sold the idea that it's normal and necessary. So as it stands, if a worker burns out and leaves a company, they have no union to turn to for assistance. And that company can just hire someone else because there's a long line of eager dreamers who think, well, that person may have burned out, but I'm gonna make it. And that person who quit, say they decide to try their hand somewhere else. Well, a lot of game companies refuse to put your name in the credits unless you're on the team when the game ships. And having your name in the credits is your resume. And all the while, as these companies profit tremendously off of their underpaid labor, chances are they shield those profits in offshore tax havens, as per this Super Bunny Hop video.
What makes his story relevant to gaming is that the biggest example he frames this entire article around is Activision Blizzard, which uses a shell company called ATVI-CV in the Netherlands to hoard and consolidate billions of dollars of revenue while not paying any taxes to the countries that help it make that revenue in the first place.
Ethics in game development. And what is all of this in service of?
And there's been one thing that people have been noticing since the very first trailer was revealed, and that is that the horses have realistic testicles that are fully animated. They're dynamic. They react to the weather system, so if you take your horse up in the mountains and it gets chilly, they're gonna shrivel up. They're get smaller.
Nope. Nah. Nope. No thanks. This superfluous nonsense is not worth burning someone out of their chosen industry, wrecking people's health, breaking up families, encouraging substance abuse. No, that's not okay. And the unfortunate truth is, it's everywhere, and not just in the AAA industry. You'll hear stories of abuse and exploitation from indie studios too. The problem isn't any one company, it's the system itself. You know, this is starting to feel like the part where I say capitalism is bad. Does that officially make me a left tuber now? No, there's got to be like an initiation ritual.
So I have to be responsible.
Hold on, I gotta find something. All right. Okay. This is the best I could find, but I'm gonna do it. This is what I'm gonna do to put this on my face, and I'm gonna officially be a left tuber, and then I'll get a commemorative, ironic skull to put on my backdrop. Okay, here we go. Fuck. Every industry needs unions. That's just a fact. People who work fast food, people who work retail, YouTubers, and yes, game developers, because under unrestrained capitalism, we're all disposable, a reality that is inextricably linked to our fetishization of individualism, but that's a topic for another day. I dislike Games of the Year lists and similar popcorn games journalism because it's propaganda by omission. Any praise left unqualified is free advertising, and not just for the game itself, but for an industry run by companies that want to quash any attempt at unionization. And look, I don't expect everyone to go,
"This is bourgeois propaganda! Hang the parasites, all power to the workers."
And I get that an individual writer at Polygon isn't the only person in charge of what makes it to publication, but this is exactly it. Every facet of a capitalist system is designed to remove responsibility from any one person's shoulders, while simultaneously insisting that there is no society, there are just men and women. Collective action is not just the responsibility of the workers within an industry, it is the responsibility of everybody with any satellite affiliation with that industry, whether it's as a journalist, a distributor, or a fan. Everybody at every level needs to be talking about this all the time, always, because it's not an isolated incident, it's not a frivolous concern, and it's only going to get worse if everyone stays silent. And we, as players of games, as critics of games, we are not detached observers. If this is a systemic problem, then we are a part of that system, which makes all of us, on some level, culpable for labor exploitation. So okay, if you have to write about a certain open-world Western-adjacent video game sequel, fine, but refuse to do so without bringing up accusations of labor exploitation against Rockstar. If an editor cuts that bit out, file a complaint, tell your colleagues, go on Twitter. I know that means putting your job on the line, and nobody wants to do that in an industry as competitive as yours, but we need to reach a point where not talking about this is considered an aberration, and we don't get there without a lot of risk. It's not easy, it's not fun, people will complain, there are a lot of folks out there with wrong ideas about labor practices and will behave accordingly, but no labor movement in history has ever had the luxury of avoiding that kind of resistance. So don't shut up about it. If you really care, never shut up about it, even if all that means for you is a short aside in an otherwise normal piece. Because the alternative is letting the games industry get worse, get more toxic, more exploitative, which hurts our games, hurts the people who make those games. It's bad for everyone. You can tell we've hit the fun part of the video when I put the choker on. I actually meant to put it on from the very beginning, but I forgot. All right, we've made it through the proselytizing portion of my TED Talk. Now it's time to discuss alternatives. What can I do besides become an insufferable acolyte of communism and collective action? Well, one big thing you can do is support and promote unionization efforts like Game Workers Unite, the Internet Creators Guild, and the Tech Workers Coalition. But it's just as important, if not more so, to remember that most games released are not coming from the AAA industry. There's plenty of talk about the need for diversification in the games industry, which is a good talk to have. But it isn't enough to ensure hiring initiatives for women, people of color, trans people, disabled people, etc. Capitalism isn't fundamentally against that because a diverse machine is still made of equally disposable parts. What's important is that we find the people who are going to be setting the world on fire in a decade and support them now. And to do that by talking about, promoting, and buying their games. So how's about we do a bit of that right now? Here are 5 games you've probably never heard of, but that you should definitely buy and play as soon as you've finished this video. Maybe supported me on Patreon. First up, Heartbound. Now, if you've heard of this game, it was probably through a dispute in early January 2018 where MatPat of Game Theory streamed Heartbound under a title that heavily implied it was an Undertale sequel, and then didn't link to the game in the description of the stream, which apparently it was their policy to do, to not link the games unless they were free. You have 11 million subscribers, Matrick, what the hell are you doing? It wasn't until Toby Fox himself jumped in that MatPat took the issue seriously and apologized, and like most people, it was Fox's tweet that got my attention. Within seconds of starting Heartbound's trailer, I turned it off, bought the game, and played it immediately. I'm a sucker for animation. Good expressions are my drug. Part of what I love about stylized cartoons and comics and video games is the range of emotions they can convey through a well-considered face. And the faces in Heartbound are good. Look at these good boys. Look at these good boys! A really convenient bonus is that the game itself is also good. You play as Lore, a kid who has to travel across dimensions to save his dog, which I think is a universally relatable story. It has a combat system that's really unique and surprising. There's also all these collectibles that don't seem to do anything, but they pile up in your room over time every time you go back. I love that. That's amazing. Stein Van Wackeren's music is great, especially in the office tower, where the sounds of clicking keyboards and mice are used as percussion, while ringing phones and fax machines serve as the melody. Yes, please, thank you. This game is in early access, and it's maybe a quarter finished, but what's there is incredibly polished, and to be honest, I'm actually really excited to watch this game grow and evolve over time because it's very good. You might even say it has heart. Bound. Next, Hiveswap Friendsim. This is a sort of spin-off game to Hiveswap Act 1, which is itself a spin-off to the webcomic Homestuck. And yes, to all of you eagle-eyed viewers with Dave Strider or Trolls as your avatars, and it's always one of those two and I don't know why, I am, in fact, a Homestuck fan, and I have been this whole time. It's been hidden right in front of you. But anyway, that doesn't matter. Hiveswap Friendsim legitimately requires no knowledge of Homestuck to appreciate or enjoy. Friendsim is a visual novel in which you play a human person who has crash landed on the planet of Alternia, which is the homeworld of a race of creatures called trolls. And your only wish is to make a friend, and also perhaps mend your many broken bones. Your many potential friends are a cast of weird, awkward, quirky, sometimes charming, sometimes violent, sometimes exceedingly f***able doofuses whose stories are all interesting and different. It is incredibly funny. James Roach's music is great, which shouldn't come really as a surprise. Each individual friend venture is super short and self-contained, so you don't have to worry about your choices playing into some sort of like grander narrative. I think, as far as I know, I haven't actually finished a game yet, but the way the game is designed, it seems like that's kind of unlikely. Third, I want to talk about Extreme Meatpunks Forever, which is a game by trans developer Heather Flowers. In this game, you guide 4 members of the anti-fascist Meatpunks across a desert wasteland as they flee from persecution and journey towards a new life in the town of Hopeville. Nothing bad happens in Hopeville. The cast is just lousy with trans, queer, disabled, neurodivergent people of color. I mean, they're all like literally different colors, but they're also coded as different races. That's more the thing that I was trying to say. Because this is a world in which fascism reigns, it makes sense that the cast is made up of marginalized people, because fascism likes to marginalize. The meat mechs are gross and uncomfortable and weird, but they're a thing of comfort for their pilots, and we come to understand them as extensions of their desire to control their own identity. Modified flesh that gives them the power they feel they lack elsewhere. As a trans person, I can say with some authority that is a mood. The combat is kind of hit or miss, but it's also extremely forgiving, and if you get frustrated, you can skip a combat section and the game won't punish you for it. Outside of that, it plays as sort of visual novel that actually has a ton of replay value because there are often a whole lot of conversations going on at once, and you can only hear one of them per scene. What's most important is that the writing is excellent and funny and heartfelt and progressive, and it's really refreshing to play a game where you just beat the shit out of fascists. Like, it's kind of like the new Wolfenstein games, except here the fascists are shown to be the bumbling, inefficient idiots they always were, rather than the clinical masterminds we see in most popular media, whose depiction actually reinforces Nazi propaganda. So that's good. It's also got a big Homestuck vibe. I'm not really sure why that became a theme. Next is Imperishable Memories by trans game developer Jen Ray. Full disclosure, I backed this game on Kickstarter. My name is in the credits, but I don't know Jen, and I didn't work on it, so ethics in games journalism, I guess. This is a story-driven bullet hell about someone returning to the realm of their memories in order to kill the past and forget the awful ways they behaved to a woman they had a crush on. It's a story about toxic masculinity, gender identity, the compartmentalization of regret, and also weird anime bullshit. I love weird anime bullshit, so this gets a pass from me. So you might look at this game and say it looks rudimentary, if not downright ugly. In fact, you may have said that about Extreme Meatpunks Forever as well. My response to this is that you should really stop and ask yourself, is this bad, or is it just different? One of the joys of combing through indie and alt games is that in the place of a gigantic budget, developers have to invent new styles to achieve their ambitions. Extreme Meatpunks Forever has backgrounds and environmental art based on ASCII expressions, which literally is part of a character's backstory. Wow, an art style that functions in tandem with the narrative? I love video games. With Imperishable Memories, Jen Ray has confronted her still developing character drawing skills by building the game around those skills. What starts off as kind of off-putting and amateurish very quickly reveals itself to be an intentional artistic direction that is executed in a fashion that is truly exceedingly beautiful. And I don't say that with a hint of irony. This game is gorgeous and captivating. Its style alone tells a story in a way that I'm not sure I've ever seen before. And if you just want to experience that without the stress of the shmup elements, you can. I'm awful at these kinds of games, but I loved this one because I didn't have to be really good at it. And you know what? That made me actually try to get good because I could do it at my own pace. This is why accessibility is important. Take note, Miyazaki. Next isn't any particular game, but a developer. I'm talking about Kitty Horrorshow. She's been doing monthly-ish horror games on her Patreon for a while now. If you know her from anything, it is the weird, spooky game Anatomy that's about the bodily functions of a house, I guess, is a way to put it. Actually, if you're a fan of like House of Leaves, you should just go play Anatomy, because that game's great. Now you might say you don't like horror games, but the thing is, like, her stuff isn't about jump scares, it's about mood. It's like tone. They're all very interesting and dark. They're more like a collage of poetry and impossible space that are trying to get you to understand like the subconscious of some person or idea. They're all fascinating things. I've been a fan of hers for a very long time, and I actually really firmly, truly believe that in like 10 years, she's going to be making the game that is the next Silent Hill 2 in terms of impact and talkability and probably obnoxious theorizing. Please don't watch Game Theory. Links to these games, plus their developers' Twitter profiles, plus whatever other relevant things I decide to throw in, will be in the description. Down below is where the description is. It's the little box below the video itself that says, "Hi, I'm the description," to you out loud, like Clippy. Remember Clippy, the paperclip? But even with all of these, this list is woefully incomplete, so if you have like your own personal favorites or things that you think deserve attention, post them in the comments and I will eventually compile a master comment and pin it below this video. So in closing, support indie developers, buy their games, go to itch.io and look for the games that look good to you and buy them, even if they're free. Buy them, give them your money, even if it's just $1. Support indie developers. Give them your money. Support indie developers. Buy their games and talk about them. Talk about them to your friends. Talk about them on Twitter. Talk about them in the comments of this video and every other video and every other thing, whether it's news about the latest Assassin's Creed or news about the latest government shutdown. Just talk about indie games no one's heard of. But really, play games and enjoy them. That's the most important thing. Like, that's what this is all about, right? That's why this is important. We all love games, and we want there to be more of them, and we want them to be better. So be proactive with your dollars. Find people who are making the kinds of games that you want to play from like AAA spaces. Instead of buying whatever the latest franchise iteration is, I guarantee you can find some Iranian developer making a version of that in their free time for basically nothing. It won't be as polished, might not be like as good, but you'll be giving your money to somebody who is wanting to make that thing, and in the next version of that they do, they'll be able to do it better. And like, changing your buying habits probably isn't going to affect the AAA industry that much, but for a little indie dev who just made a dumb little thing they thought no one would ever possibly want, it could change their life. Special thanks go to Justin Kruk, Iris Fox, Jeffrey Gralloway, Logan McQuiston, Coconel, Austin McCauley, Anonymous Benefactor, Mila Kwan, Kay Eris, The Mornhammer, Kill All Landlords, Amy Mims, Luke Jensen, Nick Hansen, Violet Viscara, Avery J, Bianca Gonzalez, Vriska Zriris. Wait, no, not Vriska. Vrisha Zriris. Am I saying your name right? Seneki, Set, Eli Gerzon, Richard Daly, Get Dunked On, and Anarcho Duck. Those folks are my $10 a month patrons over at patreon.com/LTAS. There's a lot of you folks now, aren't there? If you have money to spare after supporting all of those indie developers, why not go to patreon.com/LTAS and pledge to give me just as much as $1 a month, if not more. Everybody gets access to a 30-minute long exclusive video essay along with all kinds of other fun stuff. $5 patrons get my notes and scripts and behind-the-scenes videos. What else do I have to plug? I also host the Trans Questioning podcast with my elites. Hooray! So get a little podcast, go check it out. Link in the description. Links to all these things in the description. Just look in the description. I can't do this every time. This is exhausting. Hello. Thank you for watching this YouTube video. Has this shadow been here the whole time?